Let's begin.
Hey there, scary story fanatics. Welcome back to Cleaving Thought from Bone with your host, Sociopathic. They say that love can strike without any moment's notice, but most of us seem to jump the gun, unwilling to wait. Well, if you're the type to leap without looking, you may find some benefit in tonight's little story, a tale of costly courting that I like to call Supple Flesh, One Night Out on the Town.
Have you ever been so sure of something that you knew it to be true, and yet somehow it wasn't? Well, that's kind of where I'm at. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Ryan, and I'm a teamster. That is, I work road construction. As with most in my trade, I'm apt to hit the local bar at night after work, especially living by myself in my very own flat. The bar down the road from my home was called Johnny's, and Johnny's is a pretty cool place. It's not one of those big flashy bars, but you don't get a lot of that rowdy college crowd, and the drinks are economically friendly. The patronage consists of typical regulars, and I guess you could include me in that group. The place always smells of beer and smoke, as the owner was cool enough to skirt the law and allow customers the privilege of smoking inside. The smiles were always warm whenever I walked in. It was like this little oasis amidst the hustle, arrogance, and proclivity of the pursuit of modern appetites. Yup, Johnny's is the kind of place where you can pretty much predict its occupants before you even happened inside, and I could give you a detailed backstory on any one of them. The outsiders and passers-through were always easy enough to spot. Stop in and hang for a night, all while acting slightly awkward and out of place before exiting the doors into the night, never to be seen again, likely in pursuit of a more lively establishment. That Thursday night that I met Alara, I figured her for one of those. In a way, I suppose I figured right. I noticed her as soon as I walked into the place. Her long legs and short blue dress stood out amongst the mundane crowd and dreary tapestry. Her long legs and short blue dress stood out amongst the mundane crowd and dreary tapestry. Long red hair reached down past her shoulders, and the woman had a set of icy blue eyes that seemed to house a sort of piercing attribute. As I first made my way over to the bar itself, the bartender had already placed my usual shot and was currently filling a mug with my usual draft. Yeah, so well known, I don't even need to order a drink in that place. As I took the shot from the bar, tossed it back, and began conversing with Benny behind the bar, I did my best to nonchalantly take notice of the blue-eyed beauty in the back. She didn't seem to be with anyone, and just the show of watching every guy flock to her like a hobo on a ham sandwich was entertaining in itself. "Cute, ain't she?" Benny asked me. "Yeah, you seen her before?" "Nope, don't think she's with no one either. Seems every John in this joint has taken note of that." I took Benny's words into consideration and decided to just play it cool for the time being. Truth is, I'm not really what some would call a ladies' man. Quiet and seemingly uninterested is usually my game. But when the opportunity expresses itself, I will do my best to spark up a conversation. Lines like this usually include asking for the time when I really don't need it, or maybe just a simple hello with an introduction. Luckily, in a bar, the choices of opening lines are endless. The environment itself provides constant, ever-changing stimuli on which to comment on. Still, I knew my chances were slim. And with her being the most attractive thing to hit the bar since the weekly keg delivery, every lonely guy in the place was sure to try and occupy her time. But when she came up to the bar about 30 minutes later to order another drink, I took my opportunity, deciding, what the hell, why not? I should note that I didn't buy her a drink. That's a very common pickup tool, and I was trying to play it casual. As Benny prepared her spirit, I introduced myself and asked her name. When she told me it was Ilara, I made note that I didn't remember seeing her in here before. She giggled slightly to herself and told me that she's heard the same thing from like 7 different people before me. This must have really emphasized how femininely deprived Johnny's bar really was. She also said it like she half expected the attention she had received. Not that she particularly enjoyed it, just that she was used to being eyed like a steak, and had become no one's dummy as a result. This girl had a mind, too. Something I picked out right away, and that turned me on that much more. Company isn't company at all if you can't carry on a conversation. At the time, I noticed it, but to make mental note of it would have felt sort of presumptuous and cocky, and that isn't me. But it sure seemed like she was eyeing me up and down like a piece of meat. Everyone talks about a woman's intuition, and never a man's. Well, that's 'cause we don't got one. If we did, my spidey senses would have been going crazy. Instead, I reveled in the idea of being this female's object of passionate focus. To further my surprise, once we started talking, she stuck right by my side. We chatted ourselves through about 7 drinks, a plethora of overplayed relics on the jukebox, and 6 cigarettes before she asked me if I wanted to leave with her and head back to her place. Even as comfortable as I had become, and as inebriated as I was, I nearly choked on my drink when she asked. I didn't want to come off as overzealous and needy, so I tried to play it off like, sure, sounds fun. But it was all a performance in an attempt to conceal my feeling of being like a boy on Christmas morning, and I'm pretty sure she knew it. So, without any hesitation at all, I agreed, polished off the last of my whiskey, and followed Ilara out of the barroom door. Okay, so when I first got into the car, I didn't notice anything odd. This could either be chalked up to alcohol-induced reduction of perception, my anticipation of a fantastic evening, or a combination of many constructs. The reason, of course, doesn't matter. What matters is that I did eventually notice something odd. An assured red flag if I had the special intuition that I had mentioned earlier. I was making small talk with her, asking about how far her place was and what she did for a living. Whilst listening to her responses, I began to take in my immediate surroundings, being at the time the interior of the car. It was a Buick, relatively new, jet black, and nearly mint both inside and out. It wasn't the coffee cup in the holder that clearly was bought from a gas station. It wasn't the ashtray full of cigarette butts that, with the white filters, were clearly inconsistent with her brand. And it wasn't the light button-up shirt draped across the back seat, a moderate coffee stain easily viewed under the passing streetlight. The shirt was far too large for her. It was definitely a man's. I waited until she finished whatever it was that she was saying, before I replied with a completely unrelated inquiry of whose shirt was in the back. She explained that it was her brother's car, and that he was letting her use it while hers was in the shop. Even then, I didn't fully believe her, but simply sloughed the notion to the side, convincing myself that she was telling the truth. Apparently, my desire to get laid was a little more attention-grabbing than red flags, another debilitating condition of manhood. Smiling at her, watching out the windows as the lights passed by, I felt inertia begin to carry me forward as the car slowed. We had reached our destination. It wasn't a flat, an apartment, or anything like I expected. She couldn't have been much older than I was. We pulled into the driveway of a house. And when I say house, I mean one big-ass house. You know, like one of those houses that sporadically dot the suburban communities that encircle every large area. One of those rich bastards' homes that the driveway was so long you could barely see it from the road, some with gates to restrict unwanted visitors. Now, this house's driveway didn't have a gate, but it was one of those types of homes, and as beautiful and huge as it seemed from the front, it was only dulled in comparison to the landscape of the back. There were wooden walkways that ran to decks holding a specific purpose, such as a swimming pool or the hot tub. Within one of the stone patios, connected to the rest via one of these wooden walkways, resided a large koi fish pond, completely encircled by strategically placed bluestone on all sides and lit up with various garden lights and ornaments. But as we traversed the front door, her hanging the keys on the hook beside it, through the main living space, and onto the patio for a brief tour, it was the interior of the home that restrained my thoughts. The floors were all hardwood, and every piece of furniture, and I mean every table, every chair, everything, was upholstered in a light tan leather. All of this must have cost a fortune, I remember thinking to myself, being careful not to blurt it out loud. She brought me back inside and encouraged me to take a seat on the couch while she poured me a drink. I really didn't want one at the time, and I was already pretty wasted and felt another could induce vomiting, something you generally want to avoid when attempting to get some. I wriggled myself into comfort on her immaculate leather couch, causing it to squeak amidst my shuffling. I sat and stared around the large room, admiring what I could in dizzy inebriation. I didn't realize it right away. It wasn't until she could be heard walking back in my direction, but just before she handed me my glass, I remember thinking how if I wanted to, my skin tone would nearly allow me to blend in with the couch like a chameleon. But hiding at that moment was just about the furthest thing from my mind. I took the glass in my hand and turned my attention back to my now sitting companion, who offered up a toast to a good night, once having done so. I felt my face begin to grimace a bit at the thought of more alcohol, my stomach supporting my expression with a churning sensation. Still, I didn't want to appear rude or weak, stupid masculinity, and threw the small shot glass back, tossing the contents straight into the back of my throat. I was sure it was some kind of bourbon due to the warming sensation, as peristalsis did the rest. A moment later, I knew it was inevitable. I did my best to stick it out a minute or so, and did surprisingly well, before I asked her where the bathroom was. She told me it was right down the hall, over there, the first door on the left. I stood up and headed to the John. She stood saying that she was going to put on something more comfortable. Under normal circumstances, I would have brimmed at this comment, or at least gave it some sort of attention, but my focus was on the toilet in the bathroom. I shut the door behind me, and being acutely aware of my surroundings, did my best to hurl while making minimal noise. The drink had instantly upset my stomach, aiming my regurgitation slightly to the left. To eliminate the sounds of splashing upon impact within the center pool, I made sure to limit the depth of my gasps for air and stifled any coughs with my hands. I had successfully averted proclaiming my vomiting to whomever may be listening, but I also effectively covered my hands in sporadic glops and trails of bile and other slime. I promptly flushed the toilet with my foot and washed my hands in the nearby sink. I made sure to use the bar of soap liberally, eliminating any foul odor. I even checked by smelling my hands myself. I took one last whiff, and As I did, my world began to spin. I don't mean like a drunken dizziness. Like, it actually began to seem, at least to me, like the room was spinning out of control. At one point, I felt the floor give out beneath me, causing me to jump before I realized it was just one of those sudden feelings of weightlessness that you get sometimes when you're falling asleep. It was when I noticed that it was becoming increasingly difficult to breathe that I reached for the door to open it and find a place to lie down. When I did, however, I was met with blackness. At first, I assumed it to be another mischievous working of my mind, but the darkness persisted, resilient, unrelenting. The house beyond the bathroom was pitch black. "Lara?" I called out into the void before me as I stepped into it. It took so much just to stand up that I literally had to prop myself on the walls as I traversed the blind maze of a home. This also assisted me with feeling my way around, but trust me, I was there primarily just to keep upright and moving forward. "Lara," I called out to her again. Nothing. Suddenly, the wall ended, and before I could recenter myself, my hand slipped into airy nothing, and I was sent crashing to the floor sideways. I think I landed on some sort of end table and shattered some breakables. But even then, I took note of the supple leather bound to the surface of the table's top, somewhat breaking my fall. As I lay there in utter blindness, I could now feel the room spinning around at incredible speeds. I almost felt as if I was on one of those spinning gravity rides, commonly found at local fairs and carnivals. But it wasn't until I heard the sound of approaching footsteps that my heart began to pound. I couldn't believe my stupidity. She was going to think me an idiot, and if so, she would have been right. But because I wasn't thinking clearly, I should have sensed the danger. "Lara, is that you? I'm sorry. I couldn't find my way and I fell." My words were beginning to slur. Still, I heard no reply. "Lara," I managed to get out one last time. "My name's not Lara. It's Andrina." I wasn't exactly sure what she was saying, and I was in the middle of a question when I felt something hard come out of nowhere in the black and graze the side of my head. Now, when I say graze, the thing did make strong contact, but it was off to the side enough to glance off the side of my skull without my frontal bone having taken much of the force. In plain terms, I got lucky as fuck. My instincts kicked in. Adrenaline pulsed through my veins. I knew I was in some serious shit now. I felt at least some of my senses come back to me as I rolled to the side, kicking the bitch away from me and climbing to my feet. I stumbled over some debris, which likely saved my hide, for as I bent over to catch myself, I felt another whiff of air breeze by the back of my head. I turned to face whatever was behind me, pulled back, and swung as hard as I fucking could at something I could not see. But wherever she was, I must have connected pretty well, for I felt solid collision of my fist against skull and heard the sound of something heavy slump to the wooden floor before me. I took no chances. I remembered where she had hung the keys and grabbed them right beside the door while I made the motion of opening it and getting the fuck out of there. I didn't stop to look behind me to see if I was being followed until I was locked in the car, started it, and began pulling away as fast as that Buick would take me. I didn't see anyone following me, but that didn't diminish my haste. I thanked Christ that this was one of those houses without a gate, tore ass out into a vacant street, and sped to the nearest hospital. Upon taking my history and detailing my account, the doctor informed the police. They questioned me, asked if I was on any drugs, but I made sure to tell them exactly what had happened, my understanding of it anyway. Before I was released 2 days later, The detectives heading up the case made sure to pay me a visit. They informed me that when they arrived, that there were indeed signs of a struggle, but no Alara/Andrina was anywhere to be found. When they explained to me the final bit, my stomach tensed and my skin felt as though it crawled across my body. They told me I was lucky to have escaped, that the drink she had given me was dosed, as provided by the lab results of the located container that I drank from. If I had not thrown up, I would have been unconscious and unable to defend myself. My fate would have been sealed. All of the upholstery, that light tan leather on every piece of furniture, was actually human skin. Thinking back on the noted correlations between my skin tone and that shade of leather solidified the terror welling up in me. So, I'll leave you with this, the thought I go to sleep with every night. Be careful who you decide to go home with, guys. She's still out there.
Well, if you're out to paint the town red tonight, just remember, you may not be the only one. Then again, maybe a homicidal maniac is just your match. But if you like it hot, make sure to stop by again next weekend for a tale of Out of the Pan and Into the Fire. And until then, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications so I can catch you all again next Saturday.